Have you ever had the thoughts when you've been drinking heavily, or if, like me, you were an active addiction? I feel like I'm going crazy. I was going crazy with the drink. I never thought it would happen to me. I knew there may be some physical effects, but the madness in my mind was probably worse, especially when I was working, living in London, because it's chaos anyway, and your mind becomes chaotic when you're drinking. Now, nobody starts out in life to become a crazy alcoholic. I didn't get to the point where I was harming anybody else, but in my mind I was crazy. I was paranoid and such like, but I'll just go from the start really. I started drinking a little bit, 13, 14, drink my dad's home brew, which is lager, quite strong. Built up quite a big tolerance to that actually. And then by the time I was mid-teens, well, sort of late teens really, I was a regular drinker. I was working on a little bit of cash. Had some mates go to the pub most nights. Didn't drink anything strong really, just ordinary bitters and lagers, that sort of thing. But I felt I had a little bit more of a habit than most, because I would go maybe a little bit, still a bit later maybe, if that makes sense, to the pub, and then I would go home and then maybe have a couple of cans in my bedroom, because I lived with my parents when I was 20. Then I joined the police. Most of the people that were in the police at the time were slightly older than me, and there was a big drinking culture in the police. There's a big drinking culture all over the world, isn't it? Well, especially in the UK. It's madness in the UK. I'd used drink really because I'd been quite a shy kid, I suppose. A little bit. Not sheltered, but I just was in a small market town in Northumberland, and I was, a few years later I was in the middle of London. Well, South London initially, and then I went to the West End of London. But you know how busy that is. Major city. Pubs, bars, women, casinos, everything was there. And it was all available 24 hours a day. And I was good at my job, I was still fit and I was focusing on that. But I used to drink a bit more than most people. There's a few of us drank quite a lot. We used to go sessions 12 hours a day, 24 hours a day, because there were bars available. There was always a drink available in London, as there is in most major cities now. A lot of places didn't have this early opening, but there's always somewhere in the centre of a big city to get a drink. Work shifts, we used to go off nights and have a drink. It just catches up with you in the end. But at that point I was thinking, yeah, I did pretty well. I was married, didn't have any children at the time. Life was pretty good, bought a nice house in Essex, so I was doing my job. I didn't find that particularly taxing. It was busy, but I like being busy, as I like being busy now. Now I'm off the drink. As time went on, I started to feel a little bit more conscious of my drinking, or people noticing it and all that sort of thing, but I just rolled over that because a lot of us used to drink, and it was just sort of part and parcel on early turn to see a few people who would be slightly hungover, I'd say. Maybe you could tell they'd had a few too much to drink, because early start was 6:30 a.m. to because of the underground system. I would have to be up about 4 o'clock in the morning, so I had to get an early train, 5:05. So I try to get to bed early, but I always have a couple of drinks most days, well, every day really. Try to get to bed 9, 10, but even if you have 3 or 4 pints, you don't sleep properly. And so you sort of sleep and you're feeling a bit. Anyway, I got over that. When you're young and fit, you can ride over that. You can't function. I don't think I was an alcoholic at that time. I didn't class myself as that. I used to enjoy a drink. I mean, we all drank. People say, why do you drink? Because I enjoyed it. And so do millions of other people. And a lot of people can enjoy a drink and just have 1 or 2 a week, or have 1 or 2 sessions a week. I couldn't have 1 or 2 ever. Then mine turned into big, long sessions in the end where I couldn't get off it. And I became an alcoholic. I became addicted. So at that time I was stage 1, which is social drinking, and maybe moderate, which is stage 2. But I still felt a little bit, at times, not all the time, a bit nervous on the underground, when you're stuck in a tunnel, that sort of thing. At the time there was a lot of IRA activity. We had to deal with that. I was very confident in my job, don't get me wrong, but sometimes when I've had a few drinks and I was a bit hungover, I used to think, I don't feel too clever here. And I thought I'd get a little bit self-conscious, if that makes sense. Off duty, never on duty, off duty. And I'd be drinking to sort of calm down that anxiety at times, And over time, the withdrawal for me became worse. I started to feel more detached a little bit. So as say, a bit weaker in myself, mentally. And eventually I retired from that, and I came a bit of bad move, I think, to come back up north. And I started drinking a bit more. So I slipped into stage 3 there. I was pretty heavy drinking. I had more time. And then I lost a lot of confidence, I didn't want to really associate with many people. I'd lost the fire in my belly had gone. Any ambitions had gone. I got divorced. I was living on my own. That happens every day. I know it does. I'm not moaning about it. I'm just trying to relay the story really, the mental health side of it. And it came to the point where I was extremely anxious all the time because I was drinking most of the time. And when the anxiety kicks in, you drink or you self-medicate to try and get rid of the anxiety. The anxiety was my major problem, I think. And I didn't realise my mental health was suffering so much. Because you think, people are mad going on stabbing people and they're crazy. There's a lot of mental health issues where people look and act perfectly normally, but they've got demons, to work out and this sort of thing. And I had terrible, terrible anxiety. And I managed to come off the drink a couple of times. I didn't really mention the anxiety, so I needed to come off the drink. And I was shaking a bit and whatnot. So they put me on this medication, came off a couple of times, but I kept relapsing. And eventually I was off for 8 years, but I relapsed again. At that point, the anxiety was sky high. When I'd come off in the past and I stopped drinking, the anxiety disappeared as it has this time. After 5 years ago, I stopped drinking because I was really ill then. That's another story. There are some videos on that as well. Quite harrowing tales, really. But so the anxiety got to me at the point where I couldn't function. I wasn't physically really. Had to have a drink to get on a train, and had a lot of drinks to get on a flight, and a lot of holidays were ruined by that. I couldn't actually, I couldn't actually get on a flight at all, even medication, without getting a shed full of beer, which wasn't good. So we suggested, me and my wife, that we just drive down to Northern Italy, which was good. We had good holidays, don't get me wrong. A few personal issues, but good holidays. So I couldn't even get on a flight. So what was all that about? The anxiety was to the point where I couldn't deal with people very well. And in the end, when I was on my own, I was frightened to answer any post, frightened to answer the telephone. I was a shadow of my former self, to be honest with you. Just a complete and utter shell of a person, physically and mentally by then. But the mental health thing, I think, started with me before the physical stuff. The paranoia, wondering if people would realise how much I've been drinking, wondering if people were, noticing that I was a heavy drinker, and wondering how many, I used to go to this pub called the Forest Gate in Epping Forest, so I used to go in 3 times a day, and I was saying, God, I wonder if they're really worried about me, I wonder if they're thinking about me. They weren't bothered. People aren't bothered about you, really. They've got their own nonsense to deal with. But when the anxiety kicks in, the mental health side of it, which is mine, you really do, you feel like you're on eggshells all the time, and you become very sensitive to light and noise. All these things happen with alcohol. There's not one thing I can think positive about my life with alcohol. Everything went wrong with it. And everything's going right with it now. I'm sober. And I'm going to remain sober for that reason. I'm here to help you. If you've got any problems with anxiety, let me know, because it was the thing which really, that destroyed my life. More than the physical side, I would say. So I think the mental health side of things got to be looked at in more depth, because when I was 5 years ago, I was in the hospital for 2 years. I got quite depressed. I told my daughter, she was the only person I ever told, apart from a doctor. And I'm getting really depressed because I wasn't getting any better. I was having all this fluid drained off. I had serious physical issues and health issues. Obviously the mental health was there as well. But for the first time I mentioned to a doctor, a young female doctor, that I had this feelings of depression. And she said, we'll get you some help, this, that and the other. Later on that night, about 3 in the morning, another doctor came in and said, we're going to get you some help, this, that and the other. It was never followed up, So I think it's one thing we need to be conscious of, not just the physical side, but the mental health side of it. And I did feel as though I was going mad when I was living in that flat. Rat infested, no heating, no hot water, no food, just cans and cans of beer stacked up in a cupboard, and the odd trip in a taxi down to the pub to meet a few people who are no longer here, or some of them aren't anyway, through drink. We're all alcoholics together, birds of a feather, isn't it? So if you feel anything like this creeping up, I speak to quite a few people now, just one-to-one, and the anxiety things, that's one of the things I start to notice when I mention it. They'll say, I had terrible withdrawals, I felt sick, I was coughing up bile and all that. But when you drill down into it, the mental health side of it comes in. It's a serious subject, isn't it? But it's not talked about enough. The anxiety, the paranoia, the worry, the stress. Because I'm an overthinker anyway. If you're an overthinker, it's 1,000 times worse. When you start worrying about this, people trying to, looking at me when I'm picking up a glass and I'm shaking a bit. They're not really looking at you, but you assume they are, and your whole world turns in against you, and you become isolated. That's another thing as well. So keep an eye out for that. if you have any questions, drop me a line, and if you benefit from the channel or anybody else you know may do, then please share it. There's a lot of people on here now. There's nearly 10,000 of us who all have a huge knowledge of alcohol issues is a broader term really. A lot of people have been in worse states than me, a lot of people have been in better states than me. But there's a lot of knowledge, a lot of clever people out there, a lot better than I am, who will be able to help you if you put a comment on. Lots of interaction here now. Don't do it on your own. I'll do it with you, and I'll help you get through the worst parts as best I can.